welcome to DynamicsCon. My name is Tomas, Kapitan, and I'm from the Czech Republic from the company Artex, Informační systémy. In this session, I'd like to show you some basic information about the coding for performance or for the performance in general in AI language. And then we will look in details on partial records and how to work with partial records and how to program good code with best performance that is available for now. So let's start with some basics. At first, we will look on some find methods, for example, first, last, and set, and how they are linked to partial records. Then we will look on some at table keys, especially on how they can change the performance of partial records in the current version of the Business Central. In the Business Central 2021 version 1, and also how they will be changed in the future version, in the upcoming version 2021 Wave 2. And then on the last thing from the basics, it's a difference between pass by value and pass by reference, especially its connection with procedures. So let's start with some basics. Find first, find last. I think that this is one of the first lessons any developer learned when he starts with developing in AI language. So it's definitely some basic knowledge. So just to repeat the basics, because everybody should know it. So we have few methods how to load a record from the database. For example, we can load it using find first, find last, or even with find set, like this, or with find with plus, minus, lower, bigger. Each function has different behavior, and usually each function is for the best chose for something special. So, for example, if we want to get the first record in the table, or that from the applied filters, so we have to apply filters first. So, for example, here I'm applying set filter on document type, only orders. Then we want to get the first record. We want to go with find first, because if we go with find set or find, then the application server creates too complicated query on SQL and load more than one record. If we use find first, then the SQL server just downloads only one record instead of X here. It's one if we use find first or find last. But if we use find with a minus or plus, minus is the from the beginning, plus is from the end, then the server loads, for example, 50 records. So for one query for find first, server loads only one record. For find set, find minus, up to 50 records. And we don't want to load records that we don't want to use later. So if we want to use first record, then only one record, or then we go with find first. It's the same with find set. As I said on the previous slide, with the find first and find last, generated record is select top one. So that means that each cycle of this repeat until generate new SQL query. If we use find set, then the application server loads more than one record, and then go with it on the application level, and don't need to ask SQL server to load each one record instead of loading in a bulk, for example, again 50 records. why I say, for example, because the find set does not have exact number. It's not like select top 50 records. It depends on the server configuration and some other things in the background that are not important. The important thing is to know that find set is the most optimal solution to go with for cycles. On the previous slide, I had also find is also acceptable for cycles for repeat until, especially if there is some breakpoint or break if you want to end the cycle somewhere in the middle of the cycle, because then the optimal way should be or can be find, but again it depends on the structure of data, and usually the performance of find with a plus or minus is really comparable to performance of the find set. So this was just quick summary of find and find sets, because I want to use them and show you some more deep think about it in later parts during the partial records. So I want to summarize it. If you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to ask at the end. So now we can go and look at the table keys. I think that everyone knows how to create primary key, especially as it's created automatically. The primary key is usually clustered. Clustered means how it's stored physically in database. If the key is clustered, like usually the primary key, the entry number or document type, document number, or some similar keys in the business center are clustered. So it means that in the storage, in the database, the records are sorted or ordered by the entry number. If you have some complicated procedures, you can choose that the clustered key will be some different key. For example, I have clustered key, the posting date, and GL account number. So the records in the database will be ordered by posting date, then by GL account in the physical storage. It can be quicker and with a better performance for some tasks. So it again depends on the design of your tables. There are also some other properties about the keys. Unique, you can specify that the key should be unique, and then the user is not able to fill the same value for two records. By default, the primary key, or the first one, the primary key, is always unique. Without any properties, you cannot make a primary key non-unique. But you can create a new key that you want to be unique. For example, some identifier, or you want to have the whole address or the whole name of the customer, that it has to be unique. Then you can create a new key with a few fields like name, address, city, postcode, country, and make it unique. So then the application server or SQL server will check whether all values from all records are unique in the combination if you specify more fields. And then you can also create or enable or disable keys. About disabling keys, you can ask why to disable a key or enable set to false. The keys make searching in the database quicker, but the insertion and modification is usually slower. So if you have a table with 20 keys, then probably the searching could be quick, but again it depends on your queries, on the processes you are doing with data. but the insertion will be definitely slower than without any key. So if you have a key that you don't want to use anymore, then it's really good practice to disable the key or set enabled to false. It's linked also with these two properties. They are similar. It's a maintain shift index and maintain SQL index. Both of them allow you to disable maintaining. Maintaining is some procedure on SQL that do some sorting, some pre-processing of data. And it's linked to another performance issue, because if you have a lot of shift indexes, shift index is created for some calc fields, some fields. If you want to do some summarization of amount, then you can specify some fields. If you use this sum only for one procedure or one process, once per month, then it's usually better to have a less performance for the query itself than for every user. And it's same with SQL index. If you want to disable the index, again, set this property to false, and it will be usually quicker to work with data than to work with this key. There are also some new changes coming with the newer version, and I'm really looking for them, because the first of them is included fields for indexes. For now, we have only key that have posting date or GL account, and they will create a key on the SQL server. With included fields, we can create a new field that will a new key that will have posting date and then GL account number as a key fields, and then included fields like amount. It allows us to create more performance better queries and processes than before. We will look on it in details. So let's look on how it works right now. For example, if we want to get amount from our table and also amount and unique identifier. So in the current situation with Business Central 2021 Wave 1 and older, then all queries, even if you ask for one field, will create clustered index scan on the SQL server to get the values of your field you want to load and you want to work with. What's clustered index scan? Clustered index scan is a process on the SQL server that go through all records in the table. So if you want to get amount from the records that have a posting date bigger or equal to current date, then it needs to parse each and every record in database, in the table, in this table, not in other tables. Clustered index scan is probably the second slowest operation in the SQL server. Non-clustered index scan is a bit slower, but usually we want to avoid these processes, these tasks, because they are slower. So once we have a new opportunity to create included fields, then we have a process how to create this thing. This is a standard SQL construction with fields that you want to include into the key. So in the previous version, we have keys without this line. With the Business Central 2021 Wave 2, we can specify that amount will be included in this key, and then if we look on the process itself, then the key is included. So the SQL server needs to do just index seek index seek is the quickest operation in the SQL server. It just look on the exact record or exact records through their keys. So it's not the server does not need to check every record, just needs to go to some records that have the key posting date bigger than current date. It's easier for the server to load data. It's quicker for the server to load data. And for users, it's the process itself is always quicker than with clustered index scan. So if you can cover all your fields that you need for your processes. So for example, this process will be something like list all records with their posting dates, GL accounts, numbers, and amounts. Then you can create key. You can create key like this. So this key is translated to this key, and with this key you can cover the requested fields, amount, and posting date. So SQL Server just needs to do one index seek or more index seek based on your filters and number of records on the table. So this is especially useful with partial records, because for normal record, Business Central Application Server creates select all fields, even if you don't want to use them. Then Business Central Application Server needs to load them anyway. But with partial records, when you specify on which fields you want to use, then it's really good thing to also include them in the key. So the SQL Server can speed up the process using index seek procedure instead of clustered index or non-clustered index scan. And the last thing from the basics is pass by value and pass by reference. What's these two things? Pass by value is the only difference is this thing. It's a var keyword in the definition of the procedure header. What does it mean? If you don't write the var parameter or var keyword before your variable, then you are passing only values or copy of the original variable. So for example, if you passing general ledger entry record, then the copy of all fields from the one record you are currently using are passed to the procedure. If you use with var, the link or pointer to the record is passed. So here you are, if you are passing general ledger entry table or record, then for example 100 fields and their values are passed. Here only link to the record is passed. So this thing is always quicker. There are also some other differences, like with pass by value you cannot pass filters. So if you do some if you apply some filters and then call this procedure with the parameter with the record parameter, then the records are not copied to the procedure, and you cannot go through all the records because the filters will be cleared, and you will go to all records without filtering on what you wanted to go to. Another difference is with var you can return return the changed value, or in other words, the changes are visible from the caller. Not only the changes are not only local like with the pass by value. It's similar also with this. If you do return value without any name, and then return the value, use it, exit, and name of variable, then it returns copy of the record. So now it doesn't matter because it's decimal value. Well, but if it is record variable, then it needs to copy the whole record again. If you do it like this, then the pointer to this record is returned. This is important to know because if you apply the filters on this variable, if it's a record variable, if you apply filters on this variable and then return it, if you do it this way, then the filters are not returned because the copy of the current record is returned. If you do it this way, then the whole record or with applied filters is returned. So this is not about performance. This is about how the code behave, how your program should be developed. Because without returning the proper values with filters, then you can return something you don't want to return. So this is important to know too. And now we can go to partial records. What's partial records? Partial records allow you to define fields you want to work with, because normally standard SQL queries generated by Business Central require load all fields from all fields. With the Business Central, it has changed because it's all fields from all tables, from all table extensions. So if you have, for example, customer table, and you have installed two extensions with two table extensions on the table customer, then you have 3 tables that needs to be joined using SQL join, and then all fields from all 3 tables, from the standard one, from the first extension and the second extension, are returned. This is really this operation is really expensive on SQL Server because you need to load 3 tables, merge them using their primary keys, and return all fields. This is something that you don't want to do if you don't have to. So Microsoft added a new functionality to specify only fields you want to use. So it's partial records. With the partial records, all fields you specify are loaded, plus primary keys, because primary keys have to be loaded anyway, and then also the system fields and audit fields like last daytime modify or these fields are also returned. Or other fields are not returned or are uninitialized, so you cannot read them, but the performance will be definitely quicker. I said that you cannot read them, or you cannot read the value of these fields. It's not true, because there is a mechanism. It's the just-in-time loading that loads them when you want the value. But this is really expensive operation that should be avoided. So it's important to know just-in-time mechanism, but it's also important to know that you don't want to use this mechanism. So let's look on it in more details. Partial records added 4 new methods. It's a set load fields with parameters with field names you want to load. So you can specify as many parameters as you want. For example, you want to load amount, as I want it here. I want to use only amount, so I want server to load only the amount field. and not anything else. You can also use add/load fields and again specify as many fields you want to load. The biggest difference, or the only difference between these two methods, is that set/load fields redefine fields that should be loaded. On the other hand, add/load fields add new fields to be loaded. So if you set load fields twice, then the second call to this method override the first the fields that were defined during the first call of this method. With add/load fields, it's not overwritten, so you can call it, for example, 10 times to add some fields only based on some condition. For example, you want to load local amount only if the transaction is not in the local currency or something like that. Again, it will be better for performance to load only few fields if you don't have to use all of them. rFieldsLoaded is function that returns just true or false, whether the fields you are specifying as parameters are loaded. And you can also load fields. You can also use load fields that allows you to call just-in-time mechanism, but by yourself, not by the system. It can be useful. I cannot find an example where it can be useful because usually if you are using partial records, you are going to more than one record, and then it's almost every time better to use set load fields and add load fields instead of loading just one field, because this query always do request to SQL server to return data if the fields are not loaded already. Yeah, that's the only exception when this method does not create a SQL query. But as I said, usually it's not a good idea to create requested for specific fields instead of loaded, set the fields as requested at the start of your process. For example, if I leave this line, if I delete this line, then the system will behave as a standard query without partial records. So all fields from the table will be loaded. Not if I add back this line, set load fields amount or add load fields amount. In this way, it's the same procedure. Then SQL query will create only query that will load only the amount field and leave other fields except audit fields, system fields, primary keys uninitialized. And then I can use the amount field. Let's define a new task. We have to sum the amount field using cycle. Yeah, definitely the optimal solution will be using calc sums, but we want to look on how to work with partial records. So let's start with this task. At first, you have to load your data using find set. As I said previously, we use find set, not find first, not find last. Find set as we want to load bulk queries. And then we will go through the record and then return the sum. This is the standard approach. This is the approach with partial records. The result will be the same. We only edit this line, and this line specifies that we want to use only the amount field. This difference is huge. You cannot say it from the pictures, but we edit one line, and the difference is huge. Let's look on it. On some examples. So here we have our standard approach with amount, sum, and this. This is the same as we had here. So if we run it, for example, for 5 times, it was around 5 seconds or 6 seconds. Just to summarize the records from the table. I had 250,000 records in a GL table. So it took almost 6 seconds. So it's really long process. But how about the partial records? The only difference between these two functions or these two procedures is the set load fields line, this one line. The rest of it, both procedures is the same, but the results, yeah, you can see it now. The result is totally different. The first standard approach took almost 6 seconds. The second one with partial records took only 2 seconds. It's 3 times quicker than the standard solution when you are loading all fields. It's an environment without any table extension. It's only environment with 250,000 records without any table extension. With table extensions, the difference will be much huger because partial records will be still the same because we are loading only one field from one table. It will be the same query. For the normal standard approach, it will be, for example, with environment with 3 extensions on the same tables. That means 4 tables. It will be up to 20 seconds. So it's really huge difference. And then we have some things what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So let's look on it. Here I'm loading amount and then also using watt amount field. Here the just-in-time mechanism has to load the field. So you can see that the times for both these queries are, for this procedure, the time is a bit, it took a bit longer to finish the calculation, approximately 0.2 seconds. But it's not a so big difference. But as I said, it's a not correct solution because you don't want to let server load the watt amount by itself. You want to load the server by yourself. Here you also have some things you have to know. Do amount sum without var or with var? Without var or with var, it's passed by reference or passed by value. This is passed by value, which if I look on times for this, it's 3.5 seconds just to load, just to do the same process as we did previously, just to return the amount. If we do it with pass by reference, you can see that it's only 2.5 seconds. It's 1 second quicker, just using pass by reference. And what about field that we are not loading, that just-in-time loading needs to happen? Again, totally different. With just-in-time loading, without var, so pass by value, it's more than 7 seconds, so it's slower than standard solution or without partial records. Without partial records, we had the process took around 6 seconds. With partial records, if we use field that was not loaded with a procedure without passing the value as a value, then it took 7 seconds. So you can see that the difference is huge. If you use pass by reference, then it took 2.7. If you do pass by value, then it took up to 7 seconds. Then there are also some processes you can do quicker or slower. It depends on how you work with field you haven't loaded yet. you can add loaded fields. So if you add loaded fields here, you want to use the value, we can use add loaded fields like this. And again, you can see here it took 6.5 and here it was 3 seconds. The only difference again is that the first procedure was without var. The second one was with var, and then we added loaded fields. If we use pass by reference, then we add to the original record that we want to load what amount. If we use pass by value, then we add that we want what amount, but it's not propagated back to the caller. So it has to be loaded each time when the function is called. It's called 250,000 times per the run. So it's the reason why it took so much time to finish the process. And here there is table. We can compare each solution, how long does it took. The first one, the standard approach, was around 5 seconds. It's optimal solution because it's not necessary to use partial records, because it's definitely much more complicated to work with partial records, because you have to specify each and every field you want to load. So it's not something that can be used for every process, but if you have a process you need to optimize and you need to lower the processing time, then partial records are especially useful. You can compare, it's the same result, same fields, only one edit line, and the difference is 5 seconds and 2 seconds. This solution, this was also optimal solution, because it was about calculation in the different procedure. But it's important to know that you have to pass the variable with a var keyword. Without var keyword, it was 2 times slower, by around 1 second slower. But if you are using just-in-time mechanism, then it's important to know that it's a killer variant to use pass by reference. You can see that pass by reference here, and here. It's 6 times. It's slower than without partial records. With var, even if you are using just-in-time mechanism, it's quicker than the standard solution. It's slower than the optimal solution, because you need to create more SQL queries, but it's still optimal, better than the standard approach. But it's really depend on the number of fields you have missed, the number of fields you need to do just-in-time mechanism. So here you can compare just difference between optimal solution comparison. The blue one is the standard solution, and then the orange one is with everything inside one procedure, and the gray one is everything in one procedure, but the calculation is done in the second procedure with var. That means with passing by reference. Okay, and also partial records, there is a comparison optimal versus non-optimal solution with or without var, that means pass by reference. So thank you for watching this session. Thank you DynamicsCon for this opportunity, and now we can go to look at your questions and look at it. So thank you and bye for now. Hello everyone, thank you for watching my session. I hope you have enjoyed it. I saw that you have some questions, so let's look on them, and so we can finish this session. So let's start with the first question. The question was about whether current keys be updated with using partial records, or whether it will end with any error. The first thing I have to mention is that it's not recommended to do any update operation. It doesn't matter whether update of non-current or non-key or key fields. So to be honest, I haven't tested yet, but I think that's more important is that it's not recommended, so we don't want to do it. So I think that's the answer. So the second question I found is whether partial records are implemented somewhere in the system. Right now, it's only in OData pages and also in reports. However, with the upcoming version, Business Center 2021 Wave 2, it will be implemented on more places, like probably, because I haven't read the final papers about it. It will be implemented also in drill down pages, the lookup page, or how it's called, the lookup. I don't remember the name of the word. The preview of a record when you click on the small arrow near any field that is linked to another table. So it's another place where it can improve the performance, but to be honest, you can use it everywhere in your processes, so it will be much better in performance. Another question was, should fields that we put filters before find set be included into set load fields? It's not important, or if you don't need the field later, then it's not important, because you have to look at it like you need to define fields that you need to load from the SQL server. The fields that you are defined using set range or set filter are applied to the SQL query as a where condition. So you don't have to define them as set load using set load fields or at load fields. If you don't need the value of the field later in your process. So another question I saw was where partial records are used. I already answered that. Are only defined fields loaded when using partial records? Yeah. If you define a record variable with using set load fields, then all fields that you defined using last set load fields, using all at load fields, because as I said in the presentation, the difference between set load fields and at load fields is that set load fields override all fields that were defined earlier. Instead of, if you are using at load fields, then it will add the field to all fields that were defined earlier using set load fields or at load fields. So these fields are loaded. Then all audit fields like system last date time modified and other system fields that are in the table available. All audit fields that were added, I think, in Business Center 2020 Wave 2, if I remember correctly. And then also all primary key fields, because these fields are important. And then always some other fields if compiler decide that they need it for anything later, like you can saw in the presentation earlier. And then questions about var and non-var parameters. What's are advantages of var parameters? I think that I said everything about the var parameters that is important together with partial records. One thing, so should I use always var parameter? It's a tough question. I would like to say yes, but there are definitely places where you don't want to use var parameter. For example, if you add your own publisher that can be called by any other companies, by any other extension created by developers you don't know, then probably at the first place this record should be loaded normally without partial records, because you don't know how it will be called, or whether how the developer will work with the record. So and also there is importance to decide whether you want to allow to change values of the record, because if you define the publisher using var parameter, then everyone can change the values in the table of all fields. So you don't want to probably allow to change the record if you don't want to allow them, but probably you want to allow them to read the values. So it's important to think when you are designing the application, when you are designing the table structure, the publishers, the code itself, to decide how to work with partial records. So I cannot say that you should always use var parameter. So let's say that you have to decide by yourself whether to use them. But if you are using partial records, it's important to be sure what you are doing. So good planning, good designing. How about returning a record from the procedure with partial records? I think it was the last question. I am not sure. I don't think that it's so important, because if you are returning the record, it's always one call. I don't see an example when you are returning from the procedure the record variable that is which is called in some loop. Yeah, I don't see a good design pattern to do this. So maybe, yeah. So yeah, it's definitely good not to. Yeah. Okay, so I don't see any other questions, so I think that is everything. Thank you again. Thank you for watching all sessions from this great conference. Thank the organization team for this opportunity, and continue with discussion in the session conference chat. And if you like, definitely go and see other sessions from other tech gurus here on this great conference. So thank you for watching, and see you later. Yeah.